this might have been the college football game of the year, bro. I'm sure you know that, as Georgia and Alabama play an absolute
Oh
crazy
yeah.
game. Alabama escapes with the victory, 41-34 in Tuscaloosa, in a game where it felt like Alabama was going to hang 50 points on the Dogs. I didn't even know if the Dogs were going to put up a fight in this one, but they end up coming back towards the end. This is probably a top 3, top 5 college football game of all time I've ever watched. Definitely, I think, is falling in the top 3 to top 4 Georgia games just in general that I've watched overall. We'll start with you, though, man. Give me some of your takeaways. Tell me how the emotions were flying through you in this one, and just what the hell, man? What a game.
Man, so at first, I ain't even gonna lie to you. When Jalen was doing
Yeah.
his thing, I was like, I think they run away with this. If UGA doesn't stay poised and respond quickly, this is gonna get out of
Yeah.
hand. And they were able to do that in the second half. But that entire first half, UGA put on a dismal performance. It was just awful. I mean, they only scored 7 points in the entire first half,
Yep.
I think. And Carson Beck threw 3 picks throughout the entire
Yes.
game, one to seal the
Yes, he
game.
did.
That I mean, I got to give UGA credit though. They came back. They were trying to get it done, trying to force an overtime situation maybe, and just they fell short,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, it was a tough one for us to lose. We come out of the gates, it's 28-0 immediately. I'm sitting there in my house and I'm just like, is this really what Georgia's game plan was? From the SEC championship when we lost against Alabama last year. And I get it, it's a different team. Kalen DeBoer is there, Nick Saban is gone. We've had some turnover with both teams that, sending talent to the NFL. And then you come out the way that you do, flat,
Correct.
lifeless, sorry, pathetic, embarrassing, effortless, all of the words to just describe not putting any effort into this game. And I just truly couldn't believe how the Georgia Bulldogs were actually playing in the biggest game of the season, in one of Kirby Smart's biggest games of his career,
Yeah.
in the biggest game of the season for Carson Beck. I mean, we understand all of the implications. There were 17 NFL teams at this game for scouts to make sure that they knew who they were going to be picking
Yep.
on Sundays, or rather who they were going to be picking in the draft and who was going to be playing on Sundays. And just for Georgia not be able to control Jalen Milroe on any drive in the first half, really, it was a great job standing him up at the end of the third quarter when he tried to run the ball a couple of times. So really containing him there in the second half. But again, Jalen Milroe heard me say that he wasn't in my Heisman race, and he said, Adam, hold my beer, because he has firmly inserted himself into that
Yes, he did.
conversation. He looks like the best player in the country potentially after this game. I mean, when you're at home, you do that to the number 2 team in the country. It looks like you cannot be stopped through the air or on the ground. I mean, again, man, it was embarrassing at some points. You had Jalen Milroe running away from the best players in the country, running away from 4- and 5-star athletes,
Yep.
and it looked like high schoolers versus professionals out there in the first half. I mean, that's just how bad Alabama was making Georgia
Yes,
look.
it did.
Jalen Milroe's draft stock has improved. Kalen DeBoer truly has a weapon in Jalen Milroe. And if they play like that, like they did in the first half, you can go ahead and hand this team the national championship if they keep that up all year. You can go ahead and hand Jalen Milroe the Heisman, or he'll have to fight with Cam Ward over it, because that was just an absolute balling out session from Alabama. And you got to respect Georgia, right, for trying to exploit the secondary with the big plays, but no run plays early on, not hitting those big shots, and going down by 28 early really eliminated the run game. Jalen Milroe had more rushing yards himself at 117 than Georgia had in its entirety as a team, of 80 yards. And, early on, I'm asking myself, why are we trusting Carson Beck's arm? We're 0-3 on deep shots in the first half, 5 for 14 in the second half. Check this out, Alan. 17 throws traveled 20 or more yards in this game. That is by far the most in the Kirby Smart era. Now, Carson Beck did have some good throws downfield that were dropped. And when number 11, Arian Smith, I believe, dropped that one up front first on, I was like, I don't know if we're going to get that type of look again. Like, Alabama knows that we know they have a susceptible secondary and that we were going to take our shots. And clearly, Carson Beck and Mike Bobo continued to take those shots downfield. Now, don't get me wrong, Carson Beck had his fair share of bad ones too, but the drops that were happening throughout the game on some of the good throws from Carson Beck really could have been pivotal early on. Now, I know some people are talking about Mike Bobo in this game as well, but I personally think, Alan, he was calling great plays. His players just weren't executing in space, because to me, and Judd in, and correct me if I'm wrong, you don't stop calling good plays when you're making a historic comeback on the road versus Alabama. He was giving Carson Beck a chance to make his mark and become great
No,
in a
you
moment
don't.
where he felt like he finally did become great. But the only play call I don't really like is Carson Beck's final interception. You've got so much time, the entire field to drive,
That's
and the
true.
corner just read the play at the end of the day, bro. You know what I mean? The corner just went up,
Yes, he
number
did.
2 went up,
Like a book.
made that play. And you talk, yes, he did. And you talk about Alabama's secondary being vulnerable. It showed all game long. And I think that could be an issue later on in the year. But at the end of the day, man, I'm so proud of my team for attacking them at the point. And it was a personnel problem. It wasn't it was a personnel problem for not executing those plays. I'm not going to down Mike Bobo for continuing to put the ball in Carson Beck's hand when Alabama's secondary was susceptible on the back end. Go ahead.
Got to tip the cap to Georgia for the rally cry for the troops, man. They called you something, and they were putting up a fight. But like you said, that questionable call at the end really sealed the deal. Mike Bobo was just doing the best he could with what his players were doing on the field. I mean, it's like you said, personnel problem. Carson Beck was trying to learn to keep his composure in the pocket, throw good passes. I mean, just trying to read the defense. And when you have a Jalen Milroe rushing for 2 touchdowns and then throwing 2 touchdowns on top of it, it's it's pretty much a done deal there.
Yeah. And what was crazy too is Georgia had given up 1 play all year of 20+ yards. Alabama had 7 in this game, and they had 3 plays of 20+ yards in their first 10 plays of the game. Of course, we know Carson Beck, all of his turnovers were ugly. The fumble was careless. The first 2 picks were just awful. I mean, just bad reads from Carson Beck. And this was the point in the game where I really started to lose faith in Carson Beck.
Absolutely.
Jalen Milroe throws that really weird interception just for Carson Beck to turn around and almost throw a pick 6 on the first throw, and then a safety for the intentional grounding. I mean, literally, I'm like, we got to bench this guy. Kirby cannot let this get to a point of Alabama beating us like 55-14. Because that's how it felt. I'm like, Gunnar Stockton time. And Alan, I'm not the one to be like, oh, bench him, put the other quarterback in. We have some of these radical fans that think you just yank a professional in the NFL who's been starting for 12 years and makes $55 million a year. No, you don't do that. And that kind of translates to some of these college quarterbacks with having that same, hey, pull this guy out of the game, right? And I'm not like that. So for me to call for my quarterback to get benched.
Kill a guy's confidence that way.
Exactly. And I was one of the few that didn't want Stetson Bennett benched. I was like, give the guy some time. He ended up stepping up, making big plays. I'm hoping that's what can happen here with Carson Beck. Defense obviously couldn't stop anything on the ground, gave over 160 rushing yards up. Georgia had a really pivotal point in the game when it was 30-15. And when they delivered there, I was like, okay, there's some life in this game. Because when they were up 28-0, I'm like, yeah, we're down big, but the time is big right now. Like, we have a lot of time to get back into this game. And it was a score, a stop, keep pushing it forward, outscoring Alabama 27-11 in the second half from 28-0 to 34-33, taking all 3 quarters to convert a 4th down, literally being the biggest comeback in Georgia history. 5 for 5 on 4th down. That's amazing. It's not sustainable though. So Georgia really had to pull some things out of the bag. I don't know if you saw Carson Beck, man, specifically in the 3rd corner. I had my eyes on him like a laser, dude. He almost threw 4 interceptions just in the 3rd quarter when the Dogs finally mounted that 15-play, 80-yard drive that was aided by 2 Alabama penalties. So I'm like, yeah, we're getting some slack here, but it's just, it was so much, dude. I mean, and I'll just say this. I know I've been going a lot because this is game of the year. Again, this is a top 3 game to me as a Georgia fan. Number 1 was when we, Keely Ringo pick 6 to seal it. Number 2 was the Rose Bowl against Oklahoma. Number 3 for me is probably this Georgia-Alabama game for top 3 Georgia games all time I've ever watched. So there's a lot of takeaways. There's a lot to say about it. A few more things and then I'll be off. And then honestly, obviously any points you have, man, go ahead and come in with them. I think Carson Beck's career, at least this season, he is a senior, probably going to be going to the draft. It's going to be defined by this schedule. All right, at Tuscaloosa, you turn around and play an Auburn team who smells blood in the water, at Texas, at Ole Miss, and home versus Tennessee. So really, I'm nervous as hell, man. And this Alabama team, probably Georgia's biggest test next to Texas as well. I don't know if you knew, man, the hype around this game was so big compared to the game itself. I mean, they both delivered. College Game Day had its best September episode since 2010, and it was the second most viewed College Game
I
Day
don't doubt it.
episode of all time, bro. Of all.
Yeah, you got
Go ahead.
you had you had the dynasty that is
Yep.
Alabama, and then you have the dynasty that is becoming, University of
Yep.
Georgia, they with their back to
Mhm.
back. So, I mean, I expect that, and I also expected the comeback from Georgia as well. The caliber team y'all
Mhm.
are. I mean, I saw what y'all did to Clemson live.
Right.
I know the Kentucky game was a little disappointing, but I mean, they're a good team. We'll talk about them here in a
Yep.
little bit, So
Yep.
eh, Georgia's got some stuff to work on for sure. Definitely Carson Beck does too, if he has any plans of playing in the
Right.
NFL.
Right. And, of course, I love that we came back and Carson Beck throws for 340 yards in the second half, and he throws for 440, basically the fourth highest total in Georgia history. But you love to know that your team has that aspect of grit to them, but it should have never got to that point. And to just allow Ryan Williams to have such a crazy prayer at Jordan-air type of play and then to go and take the lead, after only being down for 42 total
Yeah.
seconds in terms of, losing the football game. The 547 total yards allowed by Georgia was the fourth highest allowed under Kirby Smart. 3 of the top 5 have been to Alabama. So I don't know if I'm going to come away from this game
Yeah.
and say, oh, Georgia's definitely got an Alabama problem. I mean, clearly they still do. Kirby's now 1-6 against them under his tenure.
Yeah.
But
Sick.
Georgia showed that they can hang. Georgia showed if you punch them in the mouth on the road and you leave a lot of time left on the clock, which isn't going to be very rare, we can easily in the same breath say that Alabama took their foot off the gas. And I think this is kind of an adjustment moment for Kalen DeBoer as well. Just those big explosive plays he had in the bag.
Yeah.
But how do you pace that out over 4 quarters when you put up 4 touchdowns in 12 minutes of regulation, right? You know what I mean? Like, how do you pace that out? So I think that's going to be a little more of a growing pain for KDB as well. And that could be a prime reason, why Georgia got back into it. But they did attack that secondary. It was an absolutely crazy game. And wow, bro. I mean, wow. What do we say about probably what was the game of the year in college football? It delivered on all aspects.
You know what? And to talk to all the Kalen DeBoer haters out there, this was his first big
Oh, yeah.
SEC
Oh, yeah.
matchup, and he beat
Yeah.
Georgia. So
Right.
get off of him. Like, I'm talking to all the people that were like, "Oh, I'm unsure. He's not really the right guy." Well, what do you say now?
Right. There's nothing.
And I'm talking to the Tide fans too. What are you saying now? And you know me, I hate
Yeah.
Alabama, but I got to give credit where
Yeah,
it's due.
absolutely have to.
You know?
Kalen DeBoer has been a winner, whether he was at Sioux Falls, being at Washington. Looks like he's going to continue to be a winner at Alabama. I never had a doubt that Kalen DeBoer was going to be good at Alabama. I just didn't know how good it would be. I didn't expect to fall off of Alabama as much as we want that. Nick Saban's toolage over, let's just say, the last 20 years in college football, and especially in Alabama, that's not going to be just swept away. That's not going to be just under the rug. You don't think KDB has talked to Saban before, and gotten some pointers from him? Like, these guys love to work together.
He's got an office.
Right. These guys love to work together. So I have all the respect in the world for Kalen DeBoer. Hell of a game. Coached his ass off. Of course, I would have liked to see Georgia come away with the win, but it is what it is. We got to be better. And, you look at Kirby Smart's post-game speech, and he's like, he always says this, you have to win more moments than they do. And according to Kirby, and I can kind of see it from a fan's perspective, there was one moment that Georgia was out defined in, and that was when Ryan Williams took the lead back. Because Georgia came back and punched Alabama in the mouth in the second half. And I'm proud of my team actually showing me something that I didn't know they had in them. And that is mounting a comeback against a top 5 team on the road in Alabama with the way that game played out. But I know we've talked this game to death. Hey, I'm proud of us, bro. We got through that game without one time saying the 17-year-old Ryan Williams. We got through it without mentioning the 17-year-old. There's a drinking game out there. Every time they say Ryan Williams is 17, take a shot. You'll be plastered halfway through a Alabama offensive drive.